You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.
The options market can be a confusing place. Sorting through the daily avalanche of data, alerts, updates, articles, and analysis to find the most important information is an overwhelming prospect. But now you have help. Welcome to the Options News Rundown, the only program that breaks through the noise to bring you the most important news and information from the world of options. Every day, we bring you the top 5 option stories curated by the options experts at theoptionsinsider.com, the premier source for options information. The Options News Rundown is brought to you by Market Taker Mentoring, the leader in options trading education. Get trader education, daily trade ideas, and more with a free 1-week trial of Market Taker Mentoring's Live Advantage Group coaching class by visiting markettaker.com/insider. And now it's time to break through the noise. It's time for your Options News Rundown.
Good morning. Today is Thursday, March 28th, 2019. This is your Options News Rundown. I'm Dan Passarelli. Our first story today is from investing.com. It's the top 5 things to know in the market on Thursday. And the first thing to know is U.S. Q4 GDP's final estimate will be out today. Following a batch of underwhelming economic reports, the final reading of fourth quarter U.S. growth will be the main event for financial markets as investors watch for further signals on the strength of the economy. The U.S. Commerce Department will release final figures on fourth quarter economic growth at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That's out. It is expected to show the economy expanded at an annual rate of 2.4% in the last 3 months of 2018, downwardly revised from a preliminary estimate of 2.6%. It expanded by 3.4% in the third quarter of last year. A report on initial jobless claims also came out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by the latest data on pending home sales at 10 a.m. Eastern. U.S. stock index futures pointed to a cautiously higher pre-opening. In the bond market, the yield on the benchmark 10-year Treasury note was 2.38% after hitting an overnight low of 2.34%, a level not seen since December of 2017. Meanwhile, the yield on the 3-month Treasury bill stood at 2.44%. The U.S. dollar index was up 0.2% at 96.49. The second thing to know today is Fed speakers are on tap. Market players will also pay close attention to comments from a parade of Federal Reserve officials for insights on the outlook for monetary policy in the months ahead. Fed Chair Richard Clarida, Governors Randall Quarles and Michelle Baumann, and St. Louis Fed President James Bullard are also set to comment on the world's largest economy at separate events throughout the day. The Fed last week suggested no rate increases would come this year, after indicating in December that 2 could take place. The U.S. Central Bank also indicated it intends to end the reduction of its massive $4.2 trillion balance sheet by September. Third thing to know today is U.S. trade team arrives in Beijing. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin arrived in Beijing for a new round of talks with Chinese officials to work on a deal that would end a months-long trade war. The in-person talks, which will be followed by a round in Washington next week, are the first face-to-face meetings the two sides have had in weeks after missing an initial end-of-March goal for a summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. China has made unprecedented proposals on a range of issues, including forced technology transfer, as the two sides work to overcome remaining obstacles, U.S. officials said ahead of the talks. The fourth thing to know today is Turkey is in turmoil. The Turkish lira plunged as much as 5% against the dollar in the latest day of turbulent trading ahead of the local elections this week that may see President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's ruling party lose control of some major cities. The lira was last at 5.5375 against the U.S. currency that's down around 4% on the day. Polls suggested Erdogan could be defeated in the capital, Ankara, in what would be a damning judgment on the president's increasingly autocratic style of government. The nationwide elections are the first since last year's currency meltdown. Turkey's central bank has taken a range of measures to stop the lira from being shorted, something for which Erdogan has blamed foreign speculators, notably J.P. Morgan Chase and Company. And then the fifth thing to know is there's a Brexit stalemate, in case you didn't know. The UK's House of Commons voted against all 8 of the alternatives to Prime Minister Theresa May's divorce deal last night in London, leaving the Brexit process as deadlocked as ever. May told her Conservative lawmakers she would step down if her Brexit deal was finally passed by Parliament at the 3rd attempt in a last-ditch bid to win over many of her party's Eurosceptic rebels. But some were unmoved, and the Northern Irish Democratic Unionist Party, which is crucial to getting the agreement through, said it would reject the deal again. As such, the default outcome is still that the UK leaves the EU on April 12th without a deal. Sterling was down 0.4% against the dollar at $1.31.3. Our second story today is from investing.com. 3 developing situations threatening oil supply could trigger price rises. It was written by Ellen R. Wald, PhD. She writes some really good articles on oil if you trade that. We're watching 3 developing situations in 3 different major oil-producing regions that are hitting global supply of crude oil in a variety of ways. Each could impact prices in the near, medium, and potentially even long term. Houston shipping channel closure is the first thing here to talk about. The closure of the Houston shipping channel after a fire at a chemical storage facility that released toxic chemicals in the air is causing ongoing delays and hurting crude oil imports and refinery runs in the area. The incident also created runoff that flowed into the shipping channel, which is why it had to be closed for several days while the chemical runoff was removed. Second thing here is oil production in Kazakhstan is taking a hit. The Central Asian oil producer is a participant in the OPEC-non-OPEC cooperation agreement, but in the past it has frequently failed to comply with its promised production cuts. This is particularly due to commitments Kazakhstan has had with oil companies like Total that developed its giant Kashagan oil field. The third thing here is power cuts in Venezuela. The power outages causing chaos in Venezuela's capital city of Caracas are also having a major impact on the country's oil industry. According to Reuters, 4 of the crude upgraders are completely shut down. These upgraders are used to turn its very sludgy oil into a substance that can move through pipelines and be loaded onto ships. And our final story today is from agriculture.com. 3 big things today in agriculture. The first is wheat futures fall overnight on profit taking. Wheat futures were lower in overnight trading as investors who held long positions or bets on higher prices took profits and sold their contracts after prices yesterday reached the highest in a month. Prices yesterday reached the 1-month high, but then fell back on profit taking. The second thing to know in this regard is ethanol production plunges in 7 days through March 22nd, and stockpiles hit new record. Ethanol production in the U.S. plunged in the week that ended March 22nd, that was a week ago, while stockpiles surged to a fresh record high, according to the Energy Information Administration. The output of the biofuel fell an average of 975,000 barrels a day last week, the lowest since the 7 days that ended on February 1st, and down from 1.004 million barrels the previous week, the EIA said in a report. In the Midwest, by far the biggest producing area, output averaged 904,000 barrels. 904,000 barrels a day, down from 935,000 the previous week. Production in the Gulf Coast region rose to 14,000 barrels a day on average to 14,000, the agency said. I think there's maybe a typo there. The third thing is floods stretching from the Dakotas to the Gulf of Mexico dominate weather maps Thursday morning. Flooding in the Midwest continues to be the major theme on weather maps this morning, as rivers and streams continue to overflow their banks in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, and Missouri. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is news you can use for today, Thursday, March 28, 2019, your Options News Rundown. I'm Dan Passarelli, Trade Smart, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Options News Rundown. To learn more about these stories or any other developments from the world of options, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com, the premier source for free options information. The Options News Rundown is brought to you by Market Taker Mentoring, the leader in option trader education. Get trader education, daily trade ideas, and more with a free 1-week trial of Market Taker Mentoring's live Advantage group coaching class by visiting markettaker.com/insider.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.